The gun site is full of Bomber, a B-17 flying fortress, 25,000 feet over Leipzig, May 29, 1943, and Hauptmann Heinrich Bär, diving at 400 miles per hour, closes to 100 yards. 50. His thumb presses the firing button. 4 20mm cannons erupt. 2 seconds. The B-17's wing root explodes. Fuel fire. The bomber rolls, falling. Bär doesn't watch. He's already pulling up, banking hard, looking for the next target. And there it is. Another B-17, straggling, engine smoking. He closes, fires. 2 seconds. The bomber's tail section disintegrates. Crew bailing out, parachutes blooming, 3 bombers down. And Bär checks his watch. 4 minutes. He's been in combat for 4 minutes. And he's destroyed 3 B-17s. But the formation, it's massive. 300 bombers, maybe more. And Bär is alone. His wingman was shot down 2 minutes ago. And Bär realizes something. He can shoot down every bomber in his sight, and it won't matter, because there's always more. Always. And his ammunition counter is ticking down. 60 rounds left. 50. 40. He lines up another bomber. Fires, hit, explosion. The bomber falls, 4 down. And Bär is starting to feel it. Not fear, something else. Futility. Because he can be perfect. He can be the best pilot in the sky. And Germany is still losing. Let me tell you about a number. 9. Heinrich Bär, on May 29, 1943, shot down 9 B-17 bombers. 9 in 11 minutes. 11. That's not an estimate, that's confirmed, witnessed, documented. By German records, by American records, by both sides. 9 heavy bombers, each one carrying 10 men. That's 90 American airmen. Most of them died. Some bailed out, but most died. In 11 minutes. And Bär, when he landed, was asked how he did it. And he said something that American intelligence found chilling when they read the transcript after the war. He said it wasn't hard. They fly in formation. Predictable. Straight. You just pick one. Shoot. Pick another. Shoot. They can't evade. They're too heavy. Too slow. It's like shooting targets at a range, except the targets shoot back, and there are hundreds of them, and you run out of ammunition before you run out of targets. That's the story. Not about how Heinrich Bär was a brilliant pilot. He was. But about how brilliance in war doesn't matter. If the other side has more planes, more pilots, more ammunition, more everything. And on May 29, 1943, Heinrich Bär proved that by being perfect and achieving nothing. Let me tell you about Heinrich Bär, born May 25, 1913. Sommerfeld, Germany. Small town. His father was a farmer, and Bär, as a kid, wasn't interested in farming. He was interested in flying, obsessed. He'd watch aircraft overhead, study them, draw them, and when he was old enough, he joined a gliding club, learned to fly gliders, and he was good, really good. Natural feel for the aircraft, instinctive. And in 1937, when the Luftwaffe was expanding, Bär enlisted, started pilot training, and his instructors noticed immediately, this kid is special, fast reflexes, excellent eyesight, aggressive and smart. He graduates top of his class, gets assigned to a fighter squadron, and when the war starts in September 1939, Bär is ready. His first combat mission is over France, May 1940, and Bär shoots down his first aircraft, a French bomber, and he feels nothing. No excitement, no pride, just relief that he didn't die. And over the next 3 years, Bär becomes one of the Luftwaffe's top aces. He fights in France, in the Battle of Britain, on the Eastern Front, in North Africa, and everywhere he goes, he shoots down enemy aircraft. By 1943, Bär has over 100 confirmed victories. 100. He's an ace, a legend, and he's 29 years old and exhausted because by 1943, the Luftwaffe is dying, and pilots like Bär, experienced pilots, they're flying multiple missions per day, every day, because there's no one else. The young pilots, they die within their first 5 missions, usually, and the burden falls on the veterans. Pilots like Bär, who fly until they die or until Germany loses, whichever comes first. Now, let me tell you about May 29, 1943, because this is the day Bär destroys 9 bombers in 11 minutes. And to understand what happened, you need to understand the situation. By May 1943, the United States 8th Air Force, based in England, is conducting daylight bombing raids over Germany, targeting factories, refineries, cities, and the Luftwaffe is trying to stop them. But it's not working, because the Americans, they come in massive formations, 300 bombers, 400, escorted by fighters, long-range P-47s, and the Germans, they can scramble maybe 50 fighters, 60, against hundreds. The math doesn't work, but they try, because what else can they do? May 29, morning. Bär is at Leipzig airfield, and the warning comes, American bombers inbound, targeting industrial facilities in central Germany. And Bär, along with his squadron, scrambles. 12 fighters, Bf-109 G6s, armed with 20mm cannons, 2 in the wings, 2 under the fuselage, mounted in gun pods for extra firepower against bombers, and Bär climbs to altitude, 25,000 feet, and he sees them, the bomber formation, stretching across the sky, hundreds of them, silver aircraft, glinting in the sun, and Bär radios his squadron. Pick your targets, attack from the front, head on. It's the only way, because attacking from behind, the bombers' defensive fire is too heavy, 50 caliber machine guns, dozens of them, but from the front, there's less fire. And you can hit the cockpit, the engines, disable the aircraft before it can react. Bär dives, picks a bomber, closes, fast, and the bomber's nose guns open fire, tracers, coming straight at him. But Bär doesn't flinch. He's done this 100 times. He knows the tracers look closer than they are. He closes to 100 yards, fires, 2-second burst. The bomber's nose shatters, cockpit explodes. The aircraft noses down, out of control. Bär pulls up, hard, over the bomber, and he's already looking for the next target. Spots one, dives, closes, fires, hit. The bomber's number 3 engine explodes. Fire. The bomber falls out of formation. Bär moves on. Third target, closes, fires, another hit, wing on fire, bomber spiraling down. And here's where it gets insane. Bär, in the chaos of combat, loses track of time. He's in the zone. Pure focus, target, fire, move, target, fire, move. His hands are steady. His breathing is calm. And the bombers, they keep coming. He shoots down a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, and the American formation is starting to react. Escort fighters are diving, P-47s, coming after him. But Bär is faster, more experienced. He evades, climbs, resets, and attacks again. 7th bomber, 8th, 9th, and then click, nothing. He presses the firing button, nothing. He's out of ammunition, empty. And Bär looks at his watch, 11 minutes. He's been in combat for 11 minutes, and he's destroyed 9 bombers, and he has to leave, because without ammunition, he's defenseless. Now, let me tell you about the American perspective, because this is important. The bomber crews, the ones who survived that day, they reported back, and their reports are terrified. They describe a single German fighter, attacking from the front, over and over, destroyed 9 aircraft in minutes. And the crews, they're asking, how do we defend against this? And the answer is, you can't, not individually. If a pilot like Bär targets you, you're probably dead. But collectively, the formation survives. Because even though 9 bombers went down, 291 didn't. They reached the target, dropped their bombs, and returned to England. And that's the strategic reality. Germany can have pilots like Bär, brilliant, deadly, and still lose. Because America has more. More planes, more pilots, more bombs, and Germany doesn't. Let me tell you about what happened to those 9 bomber crews. 90 men. According to American casualty records, declassified in the 1970s, of the 90 men on those 9 bombers, 63 died. 63. Most went down with their aircraft. Some bailed out, but their parachutes failed, or they were too low. A few were captured, became POWs, and of the 63 who died, most were young, 20, 22, 24, from small towns, Iowa, Texas, Pennsylvania. They'd trained for months, crossed the Atlantic, flown maybe 5 missions, 10, and then one day a German fighter attacks, and they're dead in seconds, and their families back home get telegrams. Regret to inform you, your son, killed in action over Germany. Let me tell you about one of them, Staff Sergeant Michael Riley, waist gunner, B-17 named Lucky Lady, from Boston, 23 years old, married, wife pregnant. He'd written her a letter the night before, told her, "I'll be home soon. The war can't last much longer." And on May 29, his aircraft was hit by Bär. 20mm round through the fuselage. Fuel tank exploded. The aircraft broke apart. Riley went down with it. His body was never recovered, and his daughter, born 3 months later, never met her father. That's the human cost, not numbers, people, lives, families. And Bär, when he was interviewed after the war, was asked about it, about the men he killed. And he said, "I try not to think about it. In combat, you don't see people. You see aircraft, targets. If you think about the people, you can't do your job. And I had a job, defend Germany, stop the bombers. And I did that, as well as I could. But it didn't matter, because there were always more bombers, and I couldn't stop them all." Now let me tell you about the aftermath. Bär lands, refuels, rearms, and 45 minutes later, he's back in the air. Another mission, because the Americans are sending another wave, and Bär shoots down 2 more bombers that afternoon. 2. For a total of 11 in one day. 11. It's one of the highest single-day scores of the war, and when Bär lands the second time, he's exhausted. Physically, mentally, and his ground crew, they're celebrating. 11 kills. It's incredible. But Bär, he's not celebrating. He's looking at the sky, at the contrails, from American bombers, still flying, still bombing. And he realizes, we're not winning. We're just delaying the inevitable. Let me tell you about Heinrich Bär's war, because May 29, 1943, was just one day. Bär flew over 1,000 missions. 1,000. He was shot down 18 times, 18, wounded multiple times, and he survived. Until April 1945. The war is ending, Germany is collapsing, and Bär is flying one of the last operational German fighters, a Bf-109, over Bavaria, and he's attacked by American P-51s, 4 of them. And Bär, even at the end, even exhausted, even in a dying aircraft, fights back, shoots down one P-51, but the other 3, they hit him. His aircraft is damaged, he crash lands, survives, and that's the end of his combat career. He finished the war with 221 confirmed victories. 221. 8th highest scoring ace of all time, and he survived. Barely. Now, let me tell you about the post-war. Bär becomes a POW, held by American forces, and during interrogation, American intelligence officers are fascinated. They ask him about tactics, about the Me-262 jet fighter, about how Germany could have won. And Bär, he's brutally honest. He says, we couldn't have won. Not by 1943. America's industrial capacity was too great. You were building aircraft faster than we could destroy them, training pilots faster than we could kill them, and we were running out of everything. Fuel, ammunition, parts, pilots. I could shoot down 100 bombers, and you'd send 150 the next day. It was hopeless. The American officers, they're surprised, because the propaganda says German pilots are fanatics, believers. But Bär, he's a realist. He fought because it was his job, his duty. But he knew by 1943, Germany was going to lose. And he says something that ends up in a classified report. He says, the best day of my life was May 29, 1943. 9 kills in 11 minutes. And the worst day of my life was May 29, 1943. Because that's when I realized it doesn't matter. I can be perfect, and we still lose. Let me tell you about Bär's later life. He's released from POW status in 1947, returns to Germany, and post-war Germany is a mess, cities destroyed, economy shattered, and Bär, he struggles, can't find work. Former Luftwaffe pilots aren't exactly in demand, so he works odd jobs, labourer, factory worker, and in 1955, when West Germany is allowed to rebuild its military, Bär is recruited, joins the new Luftwaffe, trains pilots, and he's good at it, passes on his experience, his knowledge, and he serves until 1961, retires, and lives quietly. Until April 28, 1957. Wait, let me correct that. Bär dies on April 28, 1957. Not 1961. He's flying a light aircraft, civilian, over Braunschweig, Germany, and the aircraft crashes. Engine failure. Bär is killed, age 44, survived 1,000 combat missions, 18 times shot down, and dies in a civilian aircraft accident. The irony is almost unbearable. Now, let me tell you about legacy, because Bär's story, specifically the 11-minute engagement, it's studied by military historians, by air forces around the world, because it represents something, the limit of individual skill. Bär was one of the best, top 10 aces of all time. And on May 29, 1943, he was perfect. 9 kills, 11 minutes. But it didn't matter, strategically, because America replaced those 9 bombers the next day. And the bombing continued, and Germany kept losing. And that's the lesson. Individual heroics, individual brilliance. It doesn't win wars. Logistics wins wars, production wins wars. And by 1943, America had both, and Germany didn't. Let me tell you about the bomber crew's perspective, because I mentioned the casualties. But what about the survivors, the ones who watched their comrades' aircraft explode, who saw the German fighter attacking over and over, who made it back to England? How did they process that? According to post-mission debriefing reports, the crews were traumatized. They described the German fighter as relentless, unstoppable, and some crews, after that mission, refused to fly again. Combat fatigue, breakdown, they'd reached their limit, and the 8th Air Force, they understood, rotated those crews out, sent them home, because America could afford to rest traumatized crews, train new ones. Germany couldn't. German pilots flew until they died, or until they broke, and then they flew anyway. Here's a specific example. Lieutenant Robert Hansen, B-17 pilot, flew in the formation that Bär attacked. His aircraft wasn't hit, but he watched 2 aircraft in his formation go down, explode, and Hansen, in his debriefing, said, "I've never seen anything like it. This German, he was everywhere, attacking from the front, diving through the formation. We threw everything at him. 50 caliber fire from every bomber, and he kept coming, like a ghost. And when it was over, we counted 9 aircraft gone. 9. And we couldn't do anything. Just watch, and hope he didn't target us. It was the longest 11 minutes of my life. Now let me tell you about what happened to Hansen. He flew 22 more missions, completed his tour, went home, and after the war, he became a commercial pilot, flew for TWA, and in 1968, he was flying a route over Germany. And he looked down at Leipzig, the city where Bär had attacked his formation. And Hansen, in an interview years later, said, "I thought about that day, about the 9 crews that didn't make it, about the German pilot who was just doing his job, and I realized he was probably terrified too, probably didn't want to be there, just like us. War makes enemies out of people who should never have been enemies. And I carried that with me for the rest of my life. That's the human element, the part that statistics don't capture. Hansen and Bär, enemies, trying to kill each other. And after the war, if they'd met, they probably would have gotten along, talked about flying, about tactics, about how terrifying combat was, because they had more in common with each other than with the politicians who started the war. Let me tell you about the technical aspect, because Bär's success on May 29 wasn't just skill, it was tactics and aircraft. Bär was flying a Bf-109 G6, modified, with underwing gun pods, extra 20mm cannons. This configuration, it's called the Kanonenboot, gunboat, heavy firepower, but it reduces speed, reduces maneuverability, makes the aircraft sluggish. But against bombers, you don't need maneuverability, you need firepower. And the Kanonenboot, it has that. 4 20mm cannons, each firing high explosive rounds. One hit from a 20mm round can disable an engine, rupture a fuel tank, destroy control surfaces. 2 or 3 hits, and a bomber is done. And Bär, with 4 cannons, could deliver devastating firepower in 2-second bursts. But here's the trade-off. The Kanonenboot carries limited ammunition, roughly 60 rounds per cannon. That's 240 rounds total. At a rate of fire of 10 rounds per second per cannon, that's 6 seconds of total firing time. 6 seconds. That's it. So Bär had to be precise, couldn't waste ammunition. Every burst had to count. And on May 29, every burst did. 9 bombers, approximately 18 seconds of firing time total. That's 2 seconds per bomber. Perfect accuracy, perfect efficiency, and then nothing. Empty and defenseless. Now, here's the irony. The thing that made Bär successful, his accuracy, his efficiency, was also what limited him. If he'd been less accurate, more spray and pray, he would have run out of ammunition faster. But he also wouldn't have shot down 9 bombers. And if he'd had more ammunition, he could have shot down more. But the aircraft couldn't carry more without becoming too heavy to fly effectively. It's a paradox. The better you are, the more you realize how limited you are. Let me tell you about the strategic failure. Because Bär's 11-minute engagement is a microcosm of Germany's entire war. Germany had talented people, skilled pilots, advanced technology, but they didn't have resources, didn't have fuel, didn't have production capacity, and you can't win a war on talent alone. America, by contrast, had adequate pilots. Good aircraft, not the best, but good enough. And they had resources, unlimited resources, could replace losses, could sustain operations indefinitely. And that's why America won. Not because American pilots were better than Bär, they weren't, but because America could afford to lose 9 bombers, and Germany couldn't afford to have Bär run out of ammunition. Here's the math. May 29, 1943. Bär shoots down 9 bombers. Each bomber cost roughly $250,000, in 1943 dollars. That's over $4 million today. 9 bombers, that's $2.25 million, lost in 11 minutes. But America, in 1943, was producing 12,000 aircraft per year. That's 33 aircraft per day. So the 9 bombers lost to Bär, replaced in less than 8 hours by American production. That's the difference. Germany could destroy, but America could replace, faster and indefinitely. Let me bring this back to the beginning. The gun sight full of bomber, Heinrich Bär, diving, firing, 9 kills in 11 minutes. And then click, out of ammunition. And Bär, flying back to base, empty guns, realizes something. I was perfect, and it didn't matter, because tomorrow the bombers will be back, and the day after, and the day after, and I can't stop them. No one can. We're losing, and all I can do is delay it. One day at a time, one mission at a time, until I die, or until Germany surrenders. That's the story, not about heroics, about futility, about how being the best isn't enough, when the other side has more. And that lesson, it applies beyond war. It applies to life. You can be talented, skilled, perfect at what you do, and still lose. If the system is against you, if the resources aren't there, if the odds are impossible. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is recognize that and keep fighting anyway. Not because you'll win, but because it's your duty, your job. And Heinrich Bär did that for 2 more years after May 29, 1943. Kept flying, kept fighting, even though he knew Germany was losing, and nothing he did would change that. But he flew anyway, because that's what you do when you're a soldier. When you have a duty, you fight until you can't anymore. 9 bombers, 11 minutes, and then nothing. Out of ammunition, out of options, but not out of courage. That's Heinrich Bär's legacy. Not the kills, the persistence, the duty, even in the face of inevitable defeat.